Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the show that digs into a whole stack of sources to pull out the key insights and knowledge really tailor-made for you.
That's right.
And today, we are getting into a real giant classic book. Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, sold tens of millions, still incredibly relevant today.
It really is one of those books that just lasts, isn't it?
Yeah.
And, our goal here isn't just to, rehash the ideas. We want to go deeper. We want to unpack the core lessons and, really importantly, show you how you can actually apply these principles. They seem simple, but they're incredibly effective for, improving your daily life, your relationships, your career.
Yeah, making them work for you.
Exactly. Think of it as maybe a practical handbook for human engineering.
Yeah.
All based directly on Carnegie's own work, helping you navigate, people, which is complex stuff.
Definitely the most complex system out there. And we're doing this by looking directly at excerpts from the book itself, the preface, which is fascinating, and some of the fundamental principles. And Dale Carnegie himself, for anyone who doesn't know, came from pretty humble beginnings in Missouri. But he became known as this, archpriest of the art of making friends. A real pioneer in personal business skills, confidence, motivation.
And his stuff isn't just history. I mean, these methods are still used in courses all over the world. That tells you something about how practical and powerful they remain.
Absolutely. So let's dig into the foundation. Why do these skills actually matter so much? It's not just, being nice. It's fundamental.
It really is. And Carnegie himself had this realization, didn't he? After years teaching public speaking in New York, he started way back in 1912. He noticed something.
What was that?
Well, his students, these adults, they definitely needed help with speaking effectively. But there was this even bigger hunger, a need for training in what he called the fine art of getting along with people in everyday business and social contexts.
The human element.
Exactly. And he was really honest about it. He admitted he needed that kind of training himself. It wasn't just something he observed in others.
And it wasn't just his gut feeling either, was it? There was research backing this up.
Oh, absolutely. Significant research. The Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching and also studies from the Carnegie Institute of Technology, they found something pretty startling.
Yeah.
Even in really technical fields like engineering, only about 15% of someone's financial success came down to their technical knowledge. Just 15.
Wow. Okay. So what was the rest?
The other 85%, that huge chunk, was due to skill in human engineering. Basically, personality and the ability to lead people. So for an engineer, it wasn't just about knowing the formulas better than anyone else.
It was about connecting, leading.
Precisely. Being able to connect, communicate ideas clearly, inspire the team, that's where the real success came from.
That really drives home how valuable these soft skills actually are. They're not soft at all, are they?
Not in terms of impact, no. Think about John D. Rockefeller, one of the wealthiest people in history. He put it very bluntly. He said, "The ability to deal with people is as purchasable a commodity as sugar or coffee, and I will pay more for that ability than for any other under the sun." Yeah, just pause on that.
Yeah.
He valued human interaction skills above any other business commodity.
That speaks volumes, doesn't it? About where the real leverage is in business and, life.
It really does. And this wasn't some niche interest. It was universal. There was this huge study, University of Chicago and the United YMCA schools did it.
Okay.
A massive 2-year survey. Cost $25,000 back then, which was a lot of money. They wanted to find out what adults really wanted to study. So they interviewed basically every adult in Meriden, Connecticut. They picked it as a typical American town, asked them 156 questions.
And what came out top?
Well, number 1 was health, which makes sense. But number 2, overwhelmingly, it was people. How to understand them, how to get along with them, how to make people like you, how to win them over to your way of thinking.
So a deep, fundamental human need.
Exactly. A deeply felt need that just wasn't being addressed by the education available at the time. When the committee looked for a textbook on this, they couldn't find one. An expert confirmed it. The book they need has never been written.
Until Carnegie wrote it.
Precisely.
Yeah.
That gap, that unmet need, was the spark for him to create this handbook, this practical guide for everyday interactions.
Which is why it's framed as an action book, right? It's not just for reading.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Carnegie said it wasn't written in the usual sense. It sort of grew as a child grows.
Yeah.
It came directly out of his courses, his laboratory, where thousands of adults were testing these principles out in their actual lives, their jobs, their social circles.
Real-world testing.
That's the key. It's empirically grounded, proven. Carnegie's stated goal was simple: The full purpose of this book is to help you discover, develop, and profit by those dormant and unused assets you already have.
It reminds me of that Herbert Spencer quote.
The great aim of education is not knowledge, but action.
Yes.
Yes. And that's exactly our focus in this deep dive too. How you can take these ideas and actively use them to get real results.
And the results could be pretty dramatic, couldn't they? The preface has some amazing stories.
Oh, incredible examples.
Yeah.
There's the employer, manager of 314 people. For years, he'd been operating on criticism, condemnation, standard stuff maybe.
Yeah, sounds familiar for some workplaces.
Right. But after he started applying Carnegie's principles, his whole approach changed. He stopped criticizing. He started appreciating. And instead of what he felt were 314 enemies, he ended up with 314 friends.
Wow. And the results?
Dramatic.
Yeah.
He saw new loyalty, real enthusiasm, actual teamwork. Profits went up, he had more leisure time, and he said he found infinitely more happiness both at work and at home as a total transformation.
And it wasn't just big bosses, right? It worked for salespeople, executives.
Absolutely. Salespeople reported sharp increases in sales, opening accounts they couldn't crack before. Executives gained more authority, bigger paychecks. There's this one amazing story about an executive at Philadelphia Gas Works. He was 65, about to be demoted.
Why?
Because he was seen as belligerent, couldn't lead people effectively. But after taking this training, applying the principles, he didn't just keep his job. He got a promotion with more pay at 65. Imagine that turnaround.
That's incredible. It shows it's never too late to change how you interact.
Never. And the impact stretched into personal lives, too. Spouses often came to course banquets and reported their homes were much happier since their partners started the training.
So it really bridges the gap between work and home life.
Completely. Because it's about fundamental human interaction. For some people, it was like a light bulb moment. Carnegie tells of this sophisticated art dealer, knew multiple languages, graduated from European universities. He heard a talk on these principles and was so stirred, so moved, he couldn't sleep for 2 days. He felt like a new and richer world was opening up. So these ideas aren't just for beginners. They can hit anyone, regardless of background.
And that story about the Harvard graduate.
Oh yeah, the wealthy carpet factory owner, a Harvard grad. He declared he learned more about the fine art of influencing people in 14 weeks of Carnegie's course than in his 4 years at Harvard.
That really challenges the traditional view of education, doesn't it?
It highlights the unique practical value of Carnegie's methods. This wasn't abstract theory, it was built on what actually worked in the real world. Focusing on these human skills, well, is powerful stuff.
Okay, so the principles are powerful, the results are clear, but how do we actually do it? How do we make this part of our daily habits, not just something we read about?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And Carnegie knew reading wasn't enough. He laid out this very clear blueprint for action, 9 specific suggestions for how to really engage with these ideas and make them stick.
A practical guide for application. Perfect. What's step 1?
Step 1, and he calls it the indispensable requirement, is you need a deep, driving desire to learn, a vigorous determination to increase your ability to deal with people.
So motivation first.
Absolutely. Without that real internal drive, the techniques won't mean much. He says you have to constantly remind yourself why this is important. Really picture how mastering these skills will lead to a richer, fuller, happier, and more fulfilling life. It's about building that inner fire.
Okay, so you need the desire. Assuming you have that, how should you actually tackle the book or the ideas?
His second suggestion is about reading. Read each chapter quickly the first time, just get the gist. But then, and this is crucial, if you're serious about improving, go back and reread each chapter thoroughly, properly digest it.
Don't just skim.
Right. He says this deliberate approach actually saves time in the long run and gets real results. Which leads to suggestion 3. Pause and ponder. Don't just read passively. Stop often. Think about what you're reading. Ask yourself specifically, how and when can I apply the suggestion in my life?
Personalize it immediately.
Exactly. Mental rehearsal. Make it relevant to your own world right away.
That makes sense. Active engagement. What about remembering the key takeaways?
Suggestion 4. Read with a pen or highlighter. Mark the bits you think you can use. If something really resonates, a 4-star suggestion, he calls it. Underline it, highlight it, make it stand out. You're basically creating your own personalized action guide.
Making it easier to review.
Precisely. Which brings us to number 5. Consistent review is absolutely vital. Skimming once just doesn't cut it. He gives the example of an insurance manager who reread contracts monthly for years just to keep them fresh. Carnegie even admitted he had to review his own public speaking book regularly,
We forget things so quickly.
astonishingly quickly.
Mm.
So his advice is, after you've read it thoroughly, set aside time each month to review it. Keep the book handy, glance through it. It needs this constant and vigorous campaign of review and application to make the principles truly habitual.
Okay, so desire, thorough reading, pausing, marking, and reviewing. What's next? This sounds like it leads to actually doing something.
You got it. Suggestion 6 is the big one. Learn by doing. He quotes Bernard Shaw, "If you teach a man anything, he will never learn." Because learning is active, we learn by doing.
Use it or lose it.
Essentially, yes, you must apply these rules at every opportunity. And he's realistic. He admits it's hard. It's easier to criticize than understand. It's more natural to think about what you want. But the goal isn't just information. It's forming new habits, a new way of life.
That takes effort.
It takes time, persistence, daily application. Treat the book like a working handbook. When you face a problem, when your first impulse and natural thing, which is often wrong, comes up, consciously turn to these principles for a better way.
Okay, so active application is key. How can we make that easier or more engaging?
Suggestion 7 is fun. Gamify it. Make a lively game out of it. Offer a friend, your spouse, whoever, a small reward, a dime, a dollar, every time they catch you slipping up, violating one of the principles you're working on.
Accountability partner with stakes.
Exactly. It makes it fun, keeps you on your toes, makes you more aware.
Clever. What about suggestion 8?
This one's more structured. A weekly self-examination. He talks about a successful Wall Street banker who used this. Every Saturday evening, he'd sit down and review his week, all the meetings, discussions, interviews.
And ask himself.
3 key questions. What mistakes did I make that time? What did I do that was right? And how could I have done it better? And what lessons can I learn from that experience?
Ooh, that sounds potentially painful but effective.
He said it often made him very unhappy at first, facing his mistakes, but it led to huge improvements in his judgment and how he dealt with people. Carnegie calls it an intriguing and priceless process.
A structured way to learn from experience. And the last one, number 9.
Document your successes. Keep a record. Use the back of the book, a notebook, whatever. Write down when you successfully applied a principle. Be specific: names, dates, what happened, the results.
Why is that important?
It does 2 things. It provides concrete proof that this stuff works, which inspires you to keep going. And it creates this fascinating personal diary of your own growth and improvement. It shows you how far you've come.
Okay, that's a really solid framework for actually putting these ideas into practice. Desire, read thoroughly, pause, mark, review, apply constantly, gamify, self-examine, and track successes.
Exactly. It's a complete system for making these principles part of who you are.
Right. Let's dive into the first of those core principles then. Fundamental technique number 1. Don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Sounds simple. Maybe deceptively so.
Oh, absolutely deceptive. Because it goes against, our basic human wiring half the time.
Right.
We want to criticize when things go wrong or people annoy us.
It feels natural.
It does, but Carnegie argues it's almost always futile and often damaging. He uses some pretty stark examples to show why. Think about Two Gun Crowley, that notorious killer in New York back in the day. After a shootout where he killed a police officer, he was cornered. Police everywhere. And while he's trapped, bleeding, he writes this letter saying, "Under my coat is a weary heart, but a kind one that would do nobody any harm."
Seriously, after killing someone?
Seriously. And even later, he claimed he was just defending myself. Then you have Al Capone, public enemy number 1. How did he see himself? As a public benefactor. Unappreciated, misunderstood.
Wow. So 0 self-blame.
Pretty much. Warden Lewis Laws, who ran Sing Sing prison for years, said the same thing. He observed that few of the criminals in Sing Sing regard themselves as bad men. They rationalize. They explain why they had to crack the safe or shoot someone. They see themselves as human, just like us.
So the big takeaway is, if even infamous criminals don't blame themselves, what chance do we have changing everyday people by criticizing them?
Exactly. Criticism just doesn't work effectively. It puts people on the defensive immediately. They dig in their heels, try to justify themselves. It wounds their pride, hurts that crucial sense of importance we all have, and it brews resentment. That resentment can linger for ages.
And there's psychology behind this too, right? It's not just observation.
Definitely. B.F. Skinner's famous experiments showed it clearly with animals. Reward good behavior, they learn faster and remember better. Punish bad behavior, it's much less effective. And later studies confirmed this holds true for humans.
So criticism doesn't lead to lasting change.
Rarely. and it often creates that negative backlash, the resentment. Hans Selye, another psychologist, put it perfectly. As much as we thirst for approval, we dread condemnation. That dread is a powerful force.
Okay, so theory is one thing. How does this look in practice? Like in a normal workplace?
George B. Johnston's story is a great example. He was a safety coordinator for an engineering firm. His job involved getting construction workers to wear their hard hats.
Which can be a battle, I imagine.
Totally. Initially, he did the typical thing, used his authority, told them they had to wear them, cited the regulations. The result, they'd put them on, maybe sullenly, but often take them off again the minute he walked away.
Not effective.
Not really. So he changed his approach. Instead of ordering them, he started asking questions. Are the hats uncomfortable? Do they not fit right? Then he'd pleasantly remind them that the hats were designed for their protection, showing genuine concern for them.
Focusing on their benefit.
Exactly. And the result? He saw increased compliance with the regulation with no resentment or emotional upset, just by shifting from criticism and orders to understanding and gentle reminders. That's the principle in action.
Even historical figures learned this the hard way. Lincoln, for example.
Oh, Lincoln is a fascinating case study. In his younger days, he was apparently quite cutting. He didn't just criticize. He wrote satirical letters and poems ridiculing people and left them where they'd be found.
Ouch. That sounds like asking for trouble.
It was. It created lifelong enemies. The most dramatic incident was in 1842. He anonymously mocked a politician named James Shields in the newspaper. Shields was furious and challenged Lincoln to a duel.
A duel? Seriously?
With broadswords. Lincoln, being tall, chose the weapons and even took lessons. They actually met on the dueling ground, ready to fight to the death. Thankfully, their seconds managed to intervene and stop it just in time.
Close call.
A very close call. And it taught Lincoln an invaluable lesson, as Carnegie puts it. After that, never again did he write an insulting letter. Never again did he ridicule anyone. And from then on, he almost never criticized anybody for anything. He learned the danger firsthand.
And he really stuck to that, didn't he, even as president during the Civil War?
Remarkably so. Think about the pressure he was under. He kept appointing generals to lead the Army of the Potomac. McClellan, Pope, Burnside, Hooker, Meade, and one after another, they made disastrous mistakes. Lincoln was in despair.
The whole country must have been criticizing them.
Savagely. But Lincoln, despite his own immense frustration, held his peace. He lived by his maxim, "Judge not, that ye be not judged." He practiced restraint when it must have been incredibly difficult.
There's that famous story after Gettysburg, isn't there, with General Meade?
Yes, a perfect illustration. After the victory at Gettysburg, Lee's army was trapped, vulnerable at the Potomac River. Lincoln saw this golden opportunity to end the war and ordered Meade to attack immediately.
But Meade hesitated.
He did. He called a council of war, delayed, let Lee slip away. Lincoln was absolutely furious. He cried out, "What does this mean? We had them within our grasp, yet nothing that I could say or do could make the army move."
He must have wanted to tear Meade apart.
In his anger, he sat down and wrote Meade a letter. A really sharp, scathing letter expressing his bitter disappointment, saying the chance was gone, the war prolonged indefinitely.
But he didn't send it.
He never mailed it. It was found among his papers after he died. Why? We can only guess, but Carnegie suggests Lincoln likely paused. He probably thought, okay, sending this will make me feel better for a minute, but what will it do to Meade? It'll make him defensive, justify himself, maybe resent me. It could damage his future effectiveness, maybe even make him resign.
So he chose effectiveness over venting.
Exactly. He chose the long-term strategic goal with a short-term emotional release. It's an incredible example of self-control and understanding the negative power of criticism.
It makes you think about all those angry emails or texts we might fire off.
Yeah, maybe you shouldn't, right? As Confucius said, don't complain about the snow on your neighbor's roof when your own doorstep is unclean. Look inward first. Remember, we're dealing with emotional creatures, not logic machines, people full of pride and vanity.
So the alternative isn't just silence, it's understanding.
Understanding and forgiveness. Carnegie says any fool can criticize, and most do. But it takes character and self-control to try and understand why people do what they do and to forgive their shortcomings. Carlyle said, "A great man shows his greatness by the way he treats little men. It's about choosing a higher road."
Can we talk about that Bob Hoover story, the pilot? That seems like a perfect real-world example.
It's fantastic. Bob Hoover, legendary test pilot, returning from an air show, flying a World War II plane, suddenly at 300 feet, both engines die.
Terrifying.
He manages an emergency landing, saves everyone, but the plane's badly damaged. He quickly figures out why. The mechanic accidentally filled it with jet fuel instead of regular gasoline.
Oh no, huge mistake, potentially fatal.
Absolutely. So Hoover goes back to the airport, asks for the mechanic. The young guy is devastated, sick with guilt, tears streaming down his face. He knows what he did.
You'd expect Hoover to justifiably explode, right?
That would be the natural reaction.
Ugh.
Anger, criticism, blame. But Hoover didn't. He didn't scold him. He didn't criticize. Instead, he put his arm around the mechanic's shoulder.
Insane.
Said, to show you, I am sure that you'll never do this again. I want you to service my F-51 tomorrow.
Wow. That's incredible trust instead of blame.
Incredible grace, right. It corrected the behavior far more effectively than any yelling could have, and it built loyalty and taught a powerful lesson without condemnation.
That approach applies in families too, doesn't it? The father forgets piece.
Oh, that editorial is so moving and hits home for so many parents. It's about a father realizing, with deep remorse, how he constantly nagged and criticized his young son for tiny things. Dirty face, messy room, bad table manners, torn clothes.
Just constantly finding fault.
Yes. And he realizes he was measuring you by the yardstick of my own years, expecting perfection from a little boy. He feels ashamed and goes to his sleeping son's bedside.
And makes a promise.
He resolves to be different, to be a real daddy, to play with him, laugh with him, suffer with him. And crucially, he vows, I will bite my tongue when impatient words come. I will keep saying as if it were a ritual. He is nothing but a boy, a little boy. It's about choosing understanding and empathy over constant, often counterproductive criticism within the family.
So, wrapping up this first principle, the core idea for daily life is
Instead of jumping to condemn people, try to understand them. Try to figure out why they act the way they do. Carnegie says that's far more profitable, more interesting, and it cultivates sympathy, tolerance, kindness. And remember Dr. Johnson's quote, God himself, sir, does not propose to judge man until the end of his days.
so why should we?
Exactly. Why should you and I?
That's a powerful reframe. Okay, let's move to fundamental principle number 2. Give honest and sincere appreciation. This seems linked, doesn't it? Moving from not criticizing to actively appreciating.
Very much linked. Carnegie states it quite boldly. There's only one way under high heaven to get anybody to do anything.
Only one way.
And that is by making the other person want to do it. He insists there's no other truly effective way. Sure, you can use force of gun, threats, but that only compels surface compliance and always leads to those sharply undesirable repercussions. Resentment, rebellion, down the line.
So it has to come from their desire. How do we tap into that?
By understanding what people fundamentally crave. Freud talked about the sex urge and the desire to be great. John Dewey called it the deepest urge in human nature is the desire to be important.
The desire to be important.
Yes. Think about common human wants. Health, food, sleep, money, maybe life after death, sexual fulfillment, our kids' well-being. Most of these are usually met, at least to some degree.
Okay.
But there's one that's often deeply unmet. That feeling of importance, that craving for appreciation.
A hunger.
He calls it a gnawing and unfaltering human hunger. William James said, the deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated. It's profound. And Carnegie says the rare person who can honestly satisfy that hunger in others will hold people in the palm of his or her hand. This isn't about manipulation. It's about genuinely recognizing people's worth.
And this desire for importance, it's uniquely human, right?
Largely, yes. It's a key difference between us and animals. Carnegie uses a folksy example from his childhood farm. His father bred prize-winning pigs and cattle, collected lots of blue ribbons. He'd pin these ribbons on a sheet and proudly show them off. Pigs didn't care about the ribbons, obviously, but his father did. Those ribbons gave him a feeling of importance.
And this drive fuels a lot of human endeavor.
So much. It's what drove Lincoln to study law by firelight, inspired Dickens' novels, Wren's architecture. It fueled Rockefeller's empire building and his later philanthropy. It's why people build huge houses, buy fancy cars, follow fashion trends. It's all tied to wanting to feel significant.
But how you get that feeling matters, right?
Absolutely critical. Rockefeller found it by building a hospital in China for people he'd never meet. Someone else might find it, tragically, through crime, like Dillinger wanting notoriety as public enemy number one. The method defines the character.
And when that need isn't met in healthy ways?
It can lead to, well, less healthy outcomes. Carnegie mentions Mrs. McKinley, the president's wife, who demanded constant attention, even disrupting state affairs, just to feel important. Or the unsettling idea from some psychiatrists that people might actually descend into insanity to find, in fantasy, the significance denied them in reality.
That's a heavy thought, the sheer power of needing to feel valued.
It really underscores how fundamental this need is. So if people crave it that desperately, imagine the positive power you have just by offering genuine, honest appreciation.
Like Charles Schwab, the steel guy.
Perfect example. First person in American business paid over $1 million a year back then. Why did Andrew Carnegie value him so highly? Schwab himself said it wasn't raw genius.
What was it then?
His ability to arouse enthusiasm in people. And how did he do it? Through appreciation and encouragement. He famously said, "There is nothing else that so kills the ambitions of a person as criticisms from superiors. I never criticize anyone. I believe in giving a person incentive to work. So I am anxious to praise, but loath to find fault. If I like anything, I am hearty in my approbation and lavish in my praise."
Hearty in approbation and lavish in praise. I like that. It's the opposite of what many people do.
Exactly. The average person might bawl out someone for a mistake, but say absolutely nothing when they do well. Remember that old couplet? Once I did bad, and that I heard ever. Twice I did good, but that I heard never.
So true.
Schwab insisted he'd yet to find anyone, no matter how high their position, who didn't do better work under approval versus criticism. He said Andrew Carnegie himself built his success on praising associates publicly and privately. Even Carnegie's epitaph reflected this.
What did it say?
Something like, "Here lies one who knew how to get around him, men who were cleverer than himself." It was about recognizing and appreciating others' talents.
And this applies just as much in personal life, obviously.
Oh, absolutely. That funny story about the farm wife serving hay for dinner because no one ever noticed her cooking.
Yeah. How did I know you noticed?
It's humorous, but it points to a real issue. Studies on why wives left home often cited lack of appreciation as a primary reason. Carnegie guessed the same would be true for husbands. We just take those closest to us for granted far too easily.
We stop noticing the good things.
We do. We need to make a conscious effort. There's another story about a man whose wife asked him to list 6 things she could do better. Instead of criticizing, he thought about it and sent her 6 red roses the next day with a note. "I can't think of 6 things I would like to change about you. I love you the way you are." The positive impact was apparently huge. It shows the power of appreciation over fault-finding.
It's about feeding that need for self-esteem, isn't it?
Exactly. Carnegie uses this fasting analogy. He fasted for 6 days, found it wasn't that hard. Yet people who never dream of letting their family or employees go 6 days without food will routinely let them go 6 days and 6 weeks and sometimes 60 years without the hearty appreciation they crave almost as much.
Nourishing the spirit, not just the body.
Precisely. Alfred Lunt, the actor, said, "There is nothing I need so much as nourishment for my self-esteem." We focus on physical nourishment, but neglect this vital emotional nourishment.
That Stevie Wonder story is amazing in this context.
It truly is, Paul Harvey told it. A teacher in Detroit noticed young Stevie Morris, who was blind, had incredible hearing. So when a mouse got lost in the classroom, she asked him specifically to use his amazing ears to help find it.
Acknowledging his unique gift?
Yes. It was the first time anyone had really appreciated that specific talent. Stevie Wonder later said that single moment of recognition was the beginning of a new life for him. It spurred him to develop that gift. One act of appreciation changed his trajectory.
Okay, but isn't this just flattery? Doesn't that feel fake? People see through that, right?
Great question, and a common skepticism. Carnegie addresses it head on. People say, "Oh, phooey, flattery, bear oil. Tried it. Doesn't work on smart people." And they're right. Flattery doesn't work long-term because it is shallow, selfish, insincere. It's counterfeit praise.
So what's the difference? Appreciation versus flattery?
It's simple but crucial. Sincerity. Flattery is insincere. Appreciation is sincere. Flattery comes from the teeth out. Appreciation comes from the heart out. Flattery is selfish. Appreciation is unselfish. One is admired, the other condemned.
Like that quote, "Be afraid of the friends who flatter you."
Exactly. King George V said, "Teach me neither to proffer nor receive cheap praise." Flattery is cheap praise. Or, as someone defined it, it's just telling the other person precisely what he thinks about himself. It lacks authenticity. Emerson said, "You can never say anything but what you are. If you're insincere, it shows."
So how do we avoid flattery and give genuine appreciation?
The key is shifting focus. We naturally spend, 95% of our free time thinking about ourselves. Carnegie says, just stop that for a bit. Start genuinely thinking about the other person's good points. Find something you honestly admire or appreciate about them.
Focus outward, not inward.
When you do that, you don't need to resort to fake flattery. The appreciation will come from a real place. And this is one of the most neglected virtues, he argues. Simple, honest appreciation.
So practical steps. How do we do this daily?
Be specific. Praise your kids for effort on a report card, not just the grade. Compliment their first attempt at baking something. If you have a great meal, tell the server to pass compliments to the chef. If a salesperson is really helpful, mention it.
Notice the good and verbalize it.
Yes, to everyone. Professionals, colleagues, staff, factory workers, and especially family and friends. Everyone is human. Everyone hungers for appreciation. It's the legal tender that all souls enjoy. Think about Pam Dunham, the manager whose janitor was doing a terrible job getting ridiculed. Criticism wasn't working. So Pam started noticing when he did do something well, even small things. And she made a point of praising him for it, sometimes in front of others. Gradually, his work improved dramatically until he was doing an excellent job. Honest appreciation succeeded where ridicule failed.
It changes the dynamic completely.
It does. Hurting people doesn't change them effectively. Remember that saying Carnegie kept? I shall pass this way but once, any good, or any kindness, let me do it now, for I shall not pass this way again. So stop focusing only on your own stuff. Try to genuinely see the good in others. Then forget flattery. Give honest, sincere appreciation. Be hearty and lavish with genuine praise. People will remember those words, treasure them, for years long after you've forgotten you said them.
That's a powerful call to action. Okay, principle number 3. Arouse in the other person an eager want. This sounds like the core of influence, maybe.
It's definitely central to persuading or motivating anyone. Carnegie kicks it off with that brilliant fishing analogy.
Right, the strawberries and cream versus worms.
Exactly. He loves strawberries and cream, but fish prefer worms. So when he fishes, he doesn't bait the hook with what he likes. He baits it with what the fish likes. He offers the worm and essentially asks the fish, wouldn't you like this?
Obvious for fish, less obvious for people.
Strangely, yes. We constantly forget. Lloyd George, the British Prime Minister, said his success came from learning it was necessary to bait the hook to suit the fish. Carnegie just asks, why do we talk about what we want all the time? It's childish. Of course you're interested in what you want, but nobody else is. Everyone else is interested in what they want.
So the only way to influence them is...
Talk about what they want and show them how to get it. That shift in perspective is everything.
Can you give an example? Like with kids?
Sure. Don't want your kids to smoke. Don't just preach about health risks you worry about. Show them how smoking might stop them from making the basketball team or winning the race, things they desire. Frame it in terms of their goals.
Connect it to their wants.
Always. Every action we take from birth is because we want something. Even seemingly altruistic acts, like donating to charity, you do it because you want something to help, to feel good, to fulfill a social obligation, whatever. Action springs from desire.
And Overstreet's quote ties into this.
Perfectly. Harry Overstreet wrote, first, arouse in the other person an eager want. He who can do this has the whole world with him. He who cannot walks a lonely way. It's about tapping into their internal motivation.
Carnegie had a clever story about his nephews and getting them to write home, right?
Ah, yes. His sister-in-law was worried her sons at Yale weren't writing. Carnegie bet he could get a reply without even asking. He wrote them a chatty letter, mentioned casually he was enclosing a $5 bill for each, but then deliberately didn't put the money in.
Sneaky.
Replies came back by return mail, thanking dear Uncle Andrew profusely. And, you can guess, politely inquiring about the missing cash. He appealed to their eager want.
That's clever. What about the kindergartner story? Stan Novak.
Oh, that's a fantastic parenting example. Stan's little son, Tim, was having a meltdown, absolutely refusing to go to kindergarten the next day. Kicking, screaming.
Been there.
Right. Stan's first instinct was just to order him to go. But instead, he and his wife stopped and thought, okay, if I were Tim, why would I be excited about kindergarten? They listed all the fun stuff. Finger painting, songs, new friends.
Okay. Reframing complete, then what?
They put it into action. The whole family, Stan, his wife, his other son, started finger painting at the kitchen table, having a great time, pointedly excluding Tim at first.
Building curiosity.
Exactly. Soon, Tim is peeking around the corner, begging to join in. Stan says, nope, sorry, you have to go to kindergarten first to learn how. They enthusiastically talked up all the fun things on their list.
And the next morning?
Tim was up early, sitting in a chair, fully dressed, waiting by the door. He said he didn't want to be late for kindergarten. The family's enthusiasm had ignited an eager want in Tim that no amount of arguing or threats could ever have achieved. It addressed his potential fun, not their desire for him to just go.
That's brilliant. Okay, how does this translate to, say, a business negotiation? Like Carnegie's hotel rent story.
That's a classic example of applying this under pressure. He rented a hotel ballroom for his lecture series every season. One year, suddenly they tell him the rent is tripling after he'd already printed tickets and advertised.
Nightmare scenario.
Totally. Now, naturally, he didn't want to pay it, but he knew arguing about what he wanted was pointless. The hotel only cared about what they wanted, maximizing profit.
So he didn't argue?
No. He went to the manager, but instead of complaining, he started by empathizing. "I don't blame you," he said. "If I were you, I'd probably do the same. Your job is to make profit. If you don't, you should be fired."
Disarming.
Completely. Then he suggested they look at it logically. "Let's list the advantages and disadvantages to the hotel if you insist on this increase."
Focusing entirely on their perspective.
100%. For advantages, he wrote down. Ballroom free for potentially more profitable dances, conventions. Fair enough. For disadvantages, he listed.
Yeah.
First, they lose his guaranteed income because he simply couldn't afford the new rate and would have to go elsewhere. Second, his lectures brought in large crowds of educated and cultured people, valuable free advertising and prestige for the hotel, worth more than paid ads.
Making a business case from their side.
Precisely. He wrote it down, handed it over, and asked the manager to weigh the pros and cons for the hotel and let him know the decision.
And the result?
Next day, a letter arrived. Rent increase reduced from 300% to just 50%. He got a significant reduction without ever saying, "I want," or "this isn't fair." He focused entirely on the hotel's interests and let them reach the conclusion that worked better for both of them.
That's a masterclass compared to just storming in and arguing.
Which is what most people would do, right? The human natural thing.
Yeah.
But that just leads to conflict, defensiveness, and usually no compromise because pride gets involved. It perfectly illustrates Henry Ford's great advice. Ford said, "If there is any one secret of success, it lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view and see things from that person's angle as well as from your own."
See it from their side, too. So simple, yet so profound.
And, as Carnegie notes, so often ignored. He reckons 90% of people ignore it 90% of the time.
We get trapped in our own perspective.
We really do. Think about that example letter from the ad agency to radio station managers. It was all, "We desire this, our company wants that, we need to maintain our position," just completely focused on the agency's needs.
And ignoring the station manager completely.
Totally. That manager's probably worried about his mortgage, ratings, staffing issues, who knows what. The last thing he cares about is some agency in New York talking about their desires. It's a perfect example of failing to arouse an eager want because you haven't even considered the other person's world.
Okay, so let's quickly pull these three foundational principles together as we wrap up. The core techniques for handling people effectively are:
1. Don't criticize, condemn, or complain. It's generally ineffective and breeds resentment. Understand instead.
2.
Give honest and sincere appreciation. Tap into that deep human need to feel valued and important, but keep it genuine, no flattery.
And 3.
Arouse in the other person an eager want. Frame things in terms of their interests, their desires, and show them how they can get what they want by doing what you suggest. Bait the hook to suit the fish.
These aren't just nice ideas, are they? They're practical tools.
Absolutely. Proven methods for, well, human engineering.
Yeah.
We saw how they transformed workplaces, saved careers, improved families, even changed individual lives, like Bob Hoover's mechanic or Stevie Wonder. They really work if you apply them. And remember, Carnegie stressed that knowledge that is used sticks in your mind. You have to actively practice this stuff.
So the call to action for everyone listening is to actually try these out, consciously.
Definitely. Then maybe a final thought to leave you with. This idea of truly understanding the other person's viewpoint, their fears, hopes, pride, desires. It's not just a tactic for influence. It's really the foundation of empathy, isn't it? Of real connection.
Seeing the world through their eyes.
Yeah. How much richer could our interactions be at work, at home, everywhere, if we consistently made that effort? If we chose understanding and appreciation over our natural tendency towards criticism and self-focus, maybe that choice, that conscious shift in perspective, is the real key to unlocking a lot of potential, both in ourselves and in our relationships.
A powerful thought to end on. Choose understanding.